Welcome to everyone to our Senate update, followed by a town hall discussion with some of our partners and supporters in this ERA movement. I'm Carol Jenkins. I'm the president and CEO of the ERA Coalition and the Fund for Women's Equality, sister organizations working to get the Equal Rights Amendment published in the Constitution. We're 150 partners strong, all working together for this great effort. And in the Senate, we are working on SJ Res 1, the bill to remove the time limit that is so essential. We're expecting Senator Cardin, who is the lead sponsor on SJ Res 1. He is joining us in the middle of committee meetings, and as soon as he comes, we will go to him live. But I would like to start with a message sent by Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, who is the other co-lead sponsor of SJ Res 1, the bill to remove the time limit. She is a member of the powerful Senate Appropriations Committee, among many others, and is the chief Republican co-sponsor of SJ Res 1, the bill to remove the time limit from the ERA. Let's listen to her recorded message now.
Okay, we are still at it, and we're gonna be at it until we have removed the time limit for ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. This is an effort that we're all in together. We're working to make it happen. We need more support. Quite honestly, we need more support on the Republican side. So I'm encouraged that GOP for ERA is helping out. We keep our foot on the gas on this. It is just too important because we all know that there should never be a time limit on equality. Keep it up.
And she's talking about the GOP for the ERA, founded by our ERA Coalition board member, Steve Anderson, who's doing such great work gathering bipartisan support for the bill. Next up, we have some comments from Democratic Senator Bob Casey. We talked with him a couple of weeks ago. Senator Casey is a strong advocate for policies that will raise wages for the middle class and improve early learning opportunities and healthcare for children, along with supporting equality for women. We're proud to have Senator Casey's support of the ERA. Senator, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for your years of hard work for families and children. It has not gone unnoticed. You're a hero in many, many parts, and certainly for the ERA Coalition, you're a hero this year for signing on to co-sponsor the time limit removal bill on the ERA. What motivates you? Why this amendment that we've for so long have been working on? What is that? What does it mean to you?
Well, Carol, first of all, thank you very much for your leadership. That leadership has probably never been more important because, as you know, as you can just following national policy, this can be a year of real change. And I hope it can be a year when we finally make kind of significant progress we need to make on the Equal Rights Amendment that we have not made in recent years. So I'm motivated, I think, for the same reasons that so many Americans are, that it is so long overdue, that women are recognized as having equal rights in a manner that is consistent with American values. And I have the blessing of not only to be a public official, but also to be a father of 4 daughters and my wife as well, who advised me on a number of issues. And it's still hard to comprehend that we've gone all these years, even decades, with not nearly enough progress. So I think there's plenty of motivation. And now we just have to have a commitment on legislation in addition to motivation. Women in Pennsylvania have contributed so much to the strength of our state and to the strength of our nation. And to have not nearly enough progress made, I think, is a source of both frustration and I think motivation to get things done. The good news here is that even though it's not the kind of overall robust support that we're seeking. But there is some bipartisan support. As you might remember, in the last Congress, the political support broke down basically 46 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Obviously, that's not enough. We need more than that. But there is I think there is a bridge to Republicans in their support in the last Congress that we can build on. But we have more work to do, and I think it's got to be a priority issue as we approach a series of big debates this year. But also, obviously, it has to be made a bigger issue, I think, during elections. And sometimes that's a challenge to keep it in front of the voters, keep the electorate informed about what's at stake. And I'm hoping that between now and the 2022 elections, when we have congressional elections, legislative elections around Pennsylvania, that we can make this a more prominent issue.
Right. And we do have Senators Murkowski and Collins already signed on. Do you see, and I know you do a lot of collaborative work with Republicans, the success of your Senate career. I mean, are you optimistic that more Republicans can be brought on?
I am, and a lot of that has to do with not necessarily what I or another senator will say to a colleague. Sometimes it has an impact. I like to think it does. But most of that is, I think, testament to what folks who are kind of laboring in the vineyards every day out there advocating and have been advocating in many cases for decades on this issue. It's really what they do when they bring this issue to the attention of people in their community and then ultimately to their elected representatives. That is the most powerful, the most persuasive, and the most effective way of getting that support. And the good news is not only on the ERA, but a few other issues, not as many as I would like. I think there are Republican senators that are feeling the ground moving beneath them, that they know that people want the ERA to finally be fully ratified, and that we have to make sure that we have the legislative vehicle to help us do that. So the demographics of our country and the great advocacy that so many people that you work with, I think, are starting to bear some fruit.
And our thanks so much to Senator Casey for that interview, more of which can be seen on our YouTube channel. And we are thrilled now to have Senator Cardin, Democrat of Maryland, joining us live. Thank you so much, Senator, for taking time to be with us. Senator Cardin has been a national leader on healthcare, retirement, security, the environment, and fiscal issues while representing the people of Maryland in the United States Senate. And before that, in the House of Representatives. He's worked across party lines to further U.S. national security and has continued his bipartisan work in the fight to remove the time limit from the Equal Rights Amendment in the Senate. His work with Senator Murkowski has made it clear that his priority is the codification of the ERA. Senator Cardin, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, Carol, thank you. Carol Jenkins, what a great leader, keeping us together. This is really the year. I was listening to Senator Casey, the tail end of his conversation, and I agree with everything he said, but this really is the year. We talk about this frequently, Carol, that this is the once in a generation opportunity of Build Back Better and the rescue plan, the jobs plan, and putting the ERA in the Constitution of the United States. This is the year we can get it done. Senate Joint Resolution 1, the highest priority, as shown by Senator Schumer, giving us that number. Now let's get the votes and get the number we need to pass the resolution. It's bipartisan. There's no question it's bipartisan with Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins. And by the way, Senator King, who's of course an independent, and we'll have others. We're going to get other support. I think Senator Casey is absolutely right. The landscape is moving us in this direction. We know that we need it. We know that there's strong bipartisan support. Look at from the populist point of view. First of all, most Americans think it's in the Constitution. When they're told it's not in the Constitution, they say, well, put it in the Constitution. We agree with it. It should be in the Constitution of the United States. So We recognize that. And does it make a difference? Absolutely, it makes a difference. I really appreciate what President Biden said when HJ Resolution 17 passed the House of Representatives. He said, gender equality is not only a moral issue, it's essential to our economic prosperity, our security, and the health of our democracy. So this is very important that we get this done. We need to pass the ERA. We're the only democracy since the end of World War II that every constitution that's been developed includes an equal rights amendment. The majority of our states have equal rights amendments in it. We need to put it in the federal constitution, our basic document. And we do have 38 states that have ratified it. That's what the Constitution says. There's no time limit for ratification in the Constitution. We know that with the one dealing with pay raises for members of Congress taking over 200 years to get ratified. We don't need that time. All we need is to pass our resolutions. We have 38 states that have already ratified this. This can be done now. All we need to do is get the votes in the United States Senate for this to happen. So I know Senator Schumer is prepared to bring this up for a vote. We are working with all of you to get more senators, particularly on the Republican side, to join us in this effort. We can celebrate when we get it done. We can't celebrate yet. So let's continue to stay focused. We know it's important from the point of view of equality. It's important from the point of view of America's leadership. It's important for all those reasons. And let's make 2021 the year that we finally get the Equal Rights Amendment in the Constitution of the United States.
Senator Cardin, I so love hearing you say, let's make 2021 the year that we do this. So thank you for your enthusiasm. We do know that we have some reporters in the room with us today, and we'd like to give them the opportunity, if they would like to ask a question of the senator at this point, to raise your hand. We'll spotlight you, and you can ask a question of Senator Cardin. And after that, we have some questions from some of our partners and supporters. So, Brian, are you there? Have you raised a hand? If we can spotlight Brian. Ah, there you are. Thanks, Brian. If you could identify, your great.
So I just had a quick question for the senator. You got Senators Collins and Murkowski on board, but what makes you think you can get more conservative leaning senators to join the ERA proposal?
Well, because it's the right thing to do. Maybe I'm being naive about this, but it's the right thing to do. Let's talk about the merits. I mean, the merits of it. Do you want gender equality to be subject to the constitutional protections and higher standards? And I think there are a lot of Republicans that would answer that question, yes. And they get distracted by those who are really either from the 18th century, as far as their views are concerned about women, or are seeing things in this constitutional amendment that don't exist. So we're going to address all those issues one-on-one. I've talked to a dozen Republican senators, and I know I have their attention. So I think it's extremely helpful, particularly when I'm with Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins in small groups with other Republicans, to know that I think we have a reasonable chance to get to 60, if 60 is what we're going to need to have.
Terrific. Thanks, Brian, for your question. Any other questions from the media before we turn to our partners? Well, we want to thank you so much. We know that others are in the House, Senator, so thank you. Now we have a question from Sophia Arman, who is co-chair of the Feminist Front, which is a partner organization of the ERA Coalition. Sophia.
Thank you so much, Carol. Good morning, Senator Cardin, and thank you so much for being our advocate and to be an advocate for women across the country. We deeply appreciate you being here and all your work. My question for you is, what can the general public and advocates do to have the greatest impact to see Senate Joint Resolution 1 pass on the Senate floor?
Well, Sophia, thank you for that question. I think we have to elevate the issue. We've got to get members, advocacy groups calling members saying, this is the year. This is the year. Look, it's Senate Joint Resolution 1. There's a reason why it's SJ1. That means that it's a priority for consideration in the Senate. Can we count on your vote? This is the right thing to do. They'll give you a couple arguments. They may say, well, can Congress really do that? Read to them the court decision. Clearly, Congress has the ability to deal with the time limits. That's what the court was saying in the most recent decision. So Congress has the power to change the date. We've already done it once. We could do it again. They'll talk to, does this involve any specific issue? It involves equality. If you believe in equality, then you shouldn't have any concern on any issues. We've had this standard in state actions. This is where the federal government to express its priority of equality. So I think you can deal with those issues, but you got to hit them head on, and you can't let them off the hook, and you got to get their commitment to support this resolution.
Sophia, your question answered. Thank you so much. Amina Sanusi, your question for Senator Cardin.
Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to ask him this question. So my question is, at a time when so much important legislation seems to be at a standstill in Washington, D.C., why is it so important to you that this resolution, SJ Res 1, be worked on in a bipartisan fashion? And are you optimistic about its passage?
Well, first, let me give President Biden and Vice President Harris their due, because I think we've done a lot of great things in 150 days that they've been in office. And let me give my congratulations to Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader Schumer. We passed the American Rescue Plan, raising half of our children out of poverty, providing substantial help to get beyond COVID-19, where America was last among the nations in dealing with COVID-19. We're now first. So there's been progress made. We provided help for our schools to open safely. We did so many things that have made quite a difference. We passed the American Competitiveness Act in the Senate that will provide significant help for international competition to deal with good job growth in this country and I go on all the different protecting human rights globally. That's been done. So we're getting things accomplished. And Senator Schumer has a path forward for dealing with the jobs plan and the family plan, and so that we can continue to make progress. But this is a priority. We gotta get this done. This is not a complicated issue. It requires a vote. One vote doesn't take a lot of time. One vote on the floor of the United States Senate to eliminate the time restriction, and it becomes part of the Constitution of the United States. So it's not a complicated issue. Doesn't require a lot of floor time. We're prepared to allow as much debate as members want to have on the floor of the Senate. But at the end of the day, we want to vote on it. And we want members to go on record. And we hope at the end of the day, lo and behold, maybe we'll be surprised and we'll find overwhelming majority supporting this as it should. Because I don't know of anyone who would want to oppose equal rights for women. So let's get it done.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Amina, and thank you, Senator Cardin. We understand that you have a committee meeting to go to. We thank you for taking the time out to be with us. Once again, you are always there for us, and we're with you in the Senate. We're doing everything we can.
Well, Carol, I'm on your team. You're my leader. I'm so proud of the coalition you put together, and you're doing great work. And I look forward to reaching the finish line with you in celebration. So thank you very much for everything you're doing. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you, Senator. You too. Thank you. We've talked about the bipartisan nature of the support so far for SJ Res 1. We now have a recorded statement from Senator Susan Collins from Maine, who has earned a reputation as an effective legislator who works across party lines to seek consensus on our nation's most important issues. And of course, we're happy to have her support as the second Republican co-sponsor of SJ Res 1.
It's a pleasure to join you in this important effort to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. Last year, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. That amendment gave women the right to vote. We also honored the generation of courageous women and men who secured that basic right. It has been nearly 50 years since Congress passed the ERA with overwhelming support from both sides of the aisle. Within just a few years, 35 states ratified the amendment, and I'm proud that my state of Maine was among those states that stepped forward in the name of equality. If not for the deadlines for ratification, I am confident that the requirement for 38 states would have been achieved long ago. I have therefore co-sponsored the bipartisan resolution introduced by Senators Cardin and Murkowski to remove the deadline. Maine Senator Margaret Chase Smith once addressed the question of what is a woman's proper place. Her famous answer was everywhere. The Equal Rights Amendment aims to ensure that women have the opportunity to succeed everywhere. The time to get it passed is now.
And our thanks to Senator Collins. And finally, we have Independent Senator Angus King, also of Maine, who has signed on in support of SJ Res 1. He's a steadfast believer in the need for greater bipartisan dialogue and relationship building among legislators. So, of course, he supports the Equal Rights Amendment. Senator King sent us his thoughts on this important legislation, and we'd like to share them with you now.
I'm delighted that the Equal Rights Coalition reached out to me in support of SJ Res 1. Very simple. Extend the dates so that we can get this important amendment to the Constitution over the finish line. This goes back to the 70s, but the need is no less today than it was then. Equal rights for all under our Constitution. So SJ Res 1, I think, is an important step in that direction, and hopefully will be one of the final steps that leads to the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. Thanks to the coalition for your work. I look forward to continuing to work with you. Let's get this job done and put the equal rights of all American people into our Constitution.
And thanks so much to Senator King and to all of the senators supporting the Equal Rights Amendment, and in particular SJ Res 1, as we attempt to get it passed out of the Senate. Now I'd like to introduce a couple of our partners. We couldn't do this work without the 150 organizations across the country doing everything they can every single day to make this happen. And we're going to have them speak for a little bit, and there will be some time to ask questions a little bit after. So please stay with us. Christian Nunez is the president of the National Now, and she's been that since late August 2020. after she was previously appointed by the board to be now's vice president. She is a licensed clinical social worker, a consultant, and a woman minority business owner since 2006. She is also an active community organizer and has spoken at events such as the March for Black Women in 2018. And Christian, thank you so much for being with us. Christian and I, by the way, have written an op-ed that appeared in The Hill, and I think we're going to put that in the chat, talking about the reason that the Equal Rights Amendment is so good for this country, good for business in particular. And thanks, Christian. I loved partnering with you on that op-ed, and thanks for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much, Carol, for inviting now to be part of this important panel. We are excited to be in coalition with the ERA coalition. Just important part to get this ERA ratified and to remove the time limits. Now has been, the ERA Equal Rights Amendment has been a top priority for now, and we know how important it is to ensure equality, gender equality. So we are super excited to be a part of this panel today. So just to talk about a little bit of what NOW has been involved in and why the ERA is a top priority for NOW, the Equal Rights Amendment will help ensure equality in pay, job opportunities, education for women and girls, and help addressing sexual assault and harassment at the national and local levels. The progress that we've made so far towards women's equality can be lost at any time because those advances depend on legislation that can be and have been weakened or repealed by Congress. So the importance of the ERA is a fundamental legal remedy to protect and prevent sex discrimination for both women and men. It's on genders and all genders. It would guarantee the rights affirmed by the US Constitution are held equally for all people, regardless of their sex. So this is why it's so very important. And so for the first time, sex will be considered suspect classification as race currently as it is. The governmental actions that treat males or females differently as a class would be subject to strict judicial scrutiny. Would have to meet the same class and highest levels of jurisdiction necessary and compelling to each state to be upheld at the constitutional level. So we know right now, race is race is considered upheld in those constitutions. But when we look at the ERA, we know that it has major effects on certain groups. And as the ERA keeps evolving, we have to look at how it would also help advance the rights of all women, including marginalized groups of women, women of color, LGBTQIA+ groups of persons, as well as those leaders of global women in the world as well. And the ERA would serve as a foundational principle for equal opportunity for women and women's all. So now it's been really crucial in making sure that our grassroots leadership continues to move forward. We have the ERA committee, we have grassroots membership that works in coalition, as we talked about the ERA coalition and other groups, to make sure that we are out there advocating, calling our senators, being extremely involved in communicating and sending postcards, calling senators, being at the front line to make sure that we're communicating the importance of ratifying the ERA and also removing the timeline and deadline. But one thing I want to point out is to really break down what the ERA does in other ways, because sometimes I think that we think about it only in large terms. Equal Rights Amendment is constitutional equality, and it breaks down also the fight when we talk about reproductive justice, when we're looking at birth control health insurance coverage on the basic grounds of religion. There's cases in constitutionality where there's main issues where courts have strict scrutiny, where the judge, whether or not has not done something because of the law. And when we think about females and their rights, we have to think about women, we have to think about how that also can be discriminated because of sex, right? There's also another example of a messages of law that convicted rapists who impregnated their victims to seek custody and visitation rights through the child or family court. And without the ERA and without the strict scrutiny that comes with it, the woman's rights to cut all ties from her rapist is less important to the government and the rapist would then still be able to take child support and still be able to see that child. The Equal Rights Amendment gives equal access to military care, career ladders, and their protections against sex discrimination as well in a chosen career field. So, and those were not normally guaranteed. And as Senator Carton said, many people believe that the ERA is already in the Constitution and these protections are not needed, but they're not. And if we think about it, right now, this year, we elected the first Madam Vice President who holds the highest power in America. But when she leaves that White House, right, she's not protected because of her sex. So the importance of the ERA is so extremely important. And we've seen so many advances. And now has been crucial in a lot of those things. You know, our Nevada was in 2017 was one of the states that helped become one of the states that ratified, and then in Virginia in 2018 became the 38th state. So Illinois, we have made major states are now chapters been super involved in helping get the ratification of these states passed. So we will push forward. We will continue to help organize. We will continue to make sure that we work in coalition with the ERA coalition to make sure that SJ Res 1 is passed and to do whatever our part is to make sure that takes place. But we want to just make sure that we understand the full implications of why this is important, and everyone understands how it impacts all lives and all genders. And it's not so simple as just, you know, sex discrimination applies in all ways, in all aspects of our lives. And that's why this important ratification is needed. And we're really just happy this town hall is taking place today so we can communicate that and make sure that we all continue to push forward to make sure that we get this and this timeline removed.
Great, great. Christian, thank you so much. So glad to be working alongside you in this effort. Our next partner is Joy Cheney, representing the National Urban League. She's executive director of the Washington Bureau. They're senior vice president of policy and advocacy as well. All of these huge titles she holds.
Please.
She is a domestic legal policy expert, political strategist, and former chief of staff to United States Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Joy, thank you so much for being with us today. I know you've got extensive experience too with equal rights advocates, where you worked as a policy advisor for some years. So you know the issue quite well.
Yes, I definitely know the issue quite well. And frankly, my best title is advocate for the ERA. Thanks, Carol, for having me. So first of all, the importance of the National Urban League being in this story and in this conversation is we want to make it clear that not only is passage of the Equal Rights Amendment or ratification of it, passage of SRES 1 so important as a gender issue. It is so important as a racial justice issue. And it would be good enough if it were just a gender-based issue. But we know, I know Carol and Christian know for sure, and many of you on this call, we know that so many of the gender issues that are being experienced by women and men, frankly, in this country are ones that are disproportionately felt by women of color. So when you look at equal pay, when you look at, the treatment of women in different types of fields. I was looking on, I loved there was some tweet and some graphic you all had that said same uniform, but different pay. When you look at that, you know that the majority of the women who are being paid disparately are Black and Brown women, or Asian American women or Native women. And so we know that we need to insert what the American people already likely think is already inserted, an amendment in the Constitution that makes it clear that you can't discriminate on the basis of sex, and that sex and race and other types of protected classifications, that sex and race should be treated equally and should receive the highest level of scrutiny. We know that is vitally important for Black women. And frankly, there are areas where Black men are being disparately treated, where I think this bill would be beneficial to them as well, right? When we are looking at how men of color are disparately being treated. So when you look at the ERA, don't just think of it as something that is important for women. It is something that is important for all people, right? It's something important for our transgender community as well, and people who may look at sex in a greater expansive way than a binary one. So we are so excited to be a part of this coalition. You're correct. I've been an equal pay advocate. One of the things that we will be doing this year is National Urban League will be joining the women's rights community as a champion for Black Women's Equal Pay Day this August. And, you know, we want to put the full weight and support of the National Urban League movement behind the ERA movement, because we know how important it is and how these issues are not separate. This is the year. I love that Senator Cardin said that, you know, I've been thinking so much right now, Mark Morial, the reason he's not here, our president and CEO, the reason he's not here is he's testifying about DC voting rights before the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. And, you know, we're also working on the For the People Act that's going before Congress today. All across the board, the country is having a national reckoning where we are righting old wrongs, whether it's the disfranchisement of voters all over the country, including voters of color, whether it's the disfranchisement of just the citizens of the District of Columbia, and frankly, whether it's the disfranchisement of women. We are saying time's up, right? To that, we've been saying it for a while, and now we're having a national reckoning on race, on that followed the national one that we had on sex. And we're saying that in 2021, the things that we know have been wrong for centuries, we're gonna fix them now, okay? It's over. We just have to put up with it. And so it's all across the board. And those who would seek to not have that happen are scared. But we have to remind them that if you believe in equality and if you are a patriot, as we are, that we have to correct these old wrongs in order for us to have a more perfect union. And that's what we are seeking. We are all patriots on this call. National Urban League is so honored to be on this coalition. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to weigh in.
Joy, we're delighted to have you with us. This is really, really terrific. Right now, I'd like to introduce Linda Coverly, who is chair of the ERA Coalition Legal Task Force. She is also in charge of, I don't know, about 600 lawyers in the Chicago office of Winston and Strawn, but usually our go-to person for all things legal. Linda, thanks so much for being with us today. She's going to give us an update on everything. Thank you.
That's a big topic, Carol. No, I'm delighted to speak with you all. The headline of this meeting is about the Senate and the activities in the Senate to get the time limit removal bill passed. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other things that are going on that play a role in this situation and other ways for different organizations to get involved. So as you know, there is a time limit that was put on the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment by Congress when it passed the ERA and Senate to the states in 1972. And that time limit, after one extension, ended in 1982. At that time, we had 35 ratifications. Now we have 38. And so what do we do with that time limit? Well, something needs to happen. It is likely that in any lawsuit brought to enforce the ERA, the first thing that the defendant in that lawsuit, which would be a state or a municipality or the federal government, the first thing a defendant in that suit would do is to argue that the ERA is not actually part of the Constitution because of the time limit. So this is an issue that's going to get litigated eventually. It's eventually going to be decided by a court. The time limit removal bill is a really important step in the right direction on this issue. The idea is that when Congress acts, a Congress can't bind a Congress that comes later. We can have a debate and should have a debate about whether it is appropriate for Congress to put a time limit on an amendment, particularly a civil rights amendment that may take a period of time to get the right number of ratifying states. But if Congress does have the power to impose a time limit on ratification in the way that it did for the ERA, it should also have the power to remove that time limit after the fact. So as most of you know, the time limit for the ERA is located not in the amendment itself, not in the part that the states were asked to vote on, but in the preamble. So it was a unilateral statement by Congress. It is not a statement, it is not something that the states voted on in adopting the ERA. As a result, the constitutional requirements for the amendment remain the requirements set forth in Article 5 of the Constitution. And Article 5 of the Constitution says that an amendment becomes valid for all intents and purposes when ratified by 3/4 of the states. It doesn't say anything about time limits. So if we assume that Congress did have the power to restrict the ratification, it had the power only because of that statement in the preamble, and it can remove that preamble or change that joint resolution after the fact. And that is what the House has voted to do, and what we now hope the Senate will vote to do. There's also an argument, though, that the time limit isn't effective even if it isn't removed. It's just not effective to change the basic requirements for ratification under Article 5. And that position is being advanced in a couple of lawsuits right now. There are 2 lawsuits currently pending. One is in Massachusetts, brought by Equal Means Equal. Another is in Washington, D.C., brought by the Attorneys General of Nevada, Virginia, and Illinois, the last 3 ratifying states. At this moment, both of those lawsuits have been dismissed for lack of standing. Standing is an idea that arises under a different part of the Constitution, under Article 3 of the Constitution, and it basically sets the requirements for what a litigant, a plaintiff, has to show in order to bring a lawsuit in federal court. And for different reasons, both of the courts in these 2 cases dismissed the cases as lacking standing. There were slightly different rationale in the 2 cases, and they won't necessarily come out the same way. Though both of those dismissals are up on appeal right now. The Equal Means Equal case, the appeal was argued a month or so ago. And in the Washington, D.C. case, the appeal is being briefed, and it will be briefed probably later this year. Now, importantly, the district court in the D.C. case also went on to decide the time limit issue. The court said, if it turns out I do have standing, here's how I would come out on that issue. So I assume when that case is briefed, the parties will brief both issues, both the time limit issue and the issue of standing. There will be an opportunity for organizations like many of those reflected on this call to participate in an amicus brief in that appeal, and we hope you will. We filed an amicus brief, my law firm filed an amicus brief on behalf of many of the organizations represented on this call when the case was before the district court, and we will be reprising that brief and filing it again in the Court of Appeals with hopefully even more organizations. I expect that will happen later this year. There isn't any rush. Appeals are really slow. This is what I do for a living, as I handle appeals, and they are very slow. So I expect that the appeals will be briefed later this year. One of the reasons I think it's so terrific that that lawsuit is still pending and is going to be up in the DC Circuit is that it keeps the issue of the time limit on the front burner with the Justice Department. So the defendant in both of these cases is the National Archivist, who has an obligation under a statute to publish the amendment with his certificate when ratified by the appropriate number of states as described in the Constitution. And as we all know, the archivist has refused at this point to publish the amendment. He did so on the advice of the Justice Department, which represents him in the lawsuit. So it's as if he turned to his lawyers and said, I've been sued, what do I do? And the lawyers said, don't publish the amendment. And he followed that advice. So that advice is contained in an opinion that was issued by the Office of Legal Counsel under the Bill Barr Justice Department. That opinion says that the ERA is dead and not coming back. Now, that opinion remains the opinion of the Justice Department, and the new Attorney General and new head of the OLC, who hasn't yet been confirmed, will have the opportunity to re-examine that and may decide, and we hope will decide, to withdraw that opinion. But that's something that hasn't happened yet. It's not, frankly, to my mind, a big surprise that it hasn't happened yet, because at this moment, we still don't have a confirmed head of the Office of Legal Counsel. I understand that may happen in the next month. We have a nominee, by all accounts, will be a good candidate for this issue, but he hasn't been put in place yet. And so once he is put in place, my hope is that he will revisit that opinion, withdraw it, and either issue nothing or issue something new. But the fact that the Justice Department is going to have to brief this appeal in the fall and brief not only the issue of standing, but also the issue of the time limit, will keep the issue of the time limit on the front burner for the Justice Department, and hopefully will encourage the Justice Department to withdraw that opinion and re-examine it. So that's where we are right now. We hope that the new head of the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel will be in place shortly after the 4th of July. His hearing, I believe, is going to be tomorrow, and it may be that the ERA is raised as a topic at that hearing. I don't expect him to answer those questions. So if he's asked and he doesn't answer, no one should be surprised. It is very unusual for nominees to positions like the one Chris Schroeder is going to be up for, to answer specific questions about issues that he might have to address in litigation or in opinions in the near future. So I actually, if questions are asked, that's not a bad thing. It will continue to keep this issue on the front burner for lots of folks, including members of the Senate. But don't be surprised if he doesn't answer the question. It's very unlikely that he will answer the question. So we hope he will be in place soon, and we'll take a very close look at this issue. Let me say a quick word about rescissions. As you know, a handful of states voted to rescind their prior ratifications back in the 1970s. And there was a vote by the state of Nevada to essentially sunset its prior ratification. That vote, sorry, did I say Nevada? I think I meant North Dakota. That state voted to essentially sunset its prior ratification. There is a very strong historical precedent for the idea that none of that matters. The 14th Amendment became part of the Constitution at a time when 2 of the ratifying states had voted to rescind their prior ratifications, and yet those 2 states were counted as having ratified. There's a strong argument that Congress has already weighed in on this issue and has concluded that once a state ratifies, it's ratified and it can't take that ratification back. These are all really novel issues. We haven't had a situation in the past where we've had an amendment that has been the subject of this kind of debate. Not because of its substance, although maybe that's playing a role, but because of these issues about the process of ratification. There just aren't clear precedents in the historical record or in the case law. But on the rescission issue, there is a fairly clear historical precedent that rescissions don't matter, but we can expect that issue to be litigated as well. I am happy to take any questions anybody has, Carol, or or cover any additional topics that you'd like me to address. That was my quick synopsis of where we are.
I know. You know, as we always laugh in this movement when people ask us, just give me the short story of the ERA or the short story of what's going on. There is no short version, but as I said, Linda knows everything. And in the chat, someone was asking again about the hearing for Chris Schrader, and that begins tomorrow morning, as we understand it, and a vote expected after the 4th of July. So, you know, that is when we could conceivably see some new action in that memo and in the DOJ. But as Linda says, don't expect to hear, you know, any direct answers to questions that may come up then. Speaking of questions, we do have a few minutes left for questions from the audience for Linda or Joy or Christian. So please raise your hand and we will get to your question. Marty, are you there? Can we spotlight Marty? So.
Good morning.
Good morning, Marty. Hi. Oh, I love your signage. That is just fabulous.
I thought you would. I stole that from Facebook, and frankly, I don't know where it originally came from. It may have been from Bettina or Jessica. I don't know.
It's great.
A question, I guess, mostly for Linda on this. Much of the opposition to the ERA has come directly or indirectly from religious organizations, dating back to the 1600s. Is there a First Amendment argument to be made for the ERA, saying that since so much of this is religious opposition, it's a violation of church and state?
No, unfortunately, I don't think so, because I mean, at the end of the day, it may be that religious convictions motivate some of the opposition to the ERA, but I don't think we can say that someone voting for a reason that is informed by their religious convictions is a First Amendment problem. Now, I do think there might have been issues in Utah, for example, where there's a fairly close tie, or has been historically, between a particular religious organization and the state legislature, and that's I think a pretty unique case. But in most places, that we're not talking about a particular religious organization who is dominating the conversation. What I think is really important is to get religious organizations who do support equality. And we had religious organizations sign our brief that we filed in the district court. I hope to have religious organizations sign the brief we filed in the DC circuit. But this is an excellent time for the religious left to start showing up. And I knew that the ERA was going to pass in Illinois when one of our representatives stood up and said, I'm pro-life. I've always been pro-life. I am voting in favor of the ERA because God created my daughters and my sons equal. And I think there's a very compelling argument for equality that comes from religious organizations on the other side of the aisle, to the extent that religious organizations respect the aisles in any way. So.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marty and Linda. A question for Christian. Someone in the chat wanting to be brought up to date on recent now actions and any court cases or anything that you are pursuing.
Sure. So the most recent court case now was involved in was the joint amicus curiae brief that over 50 other women's and civil rights organizations signed on. That's the most recent one that now is involved in. And besides that, we haven't signed on to any other court cases. But regarding actions, the 28th Amendment ERA Committee has been doing most of the actions that have been going on. I think everyone's familiar with that committee. Kabi Hoffman is the chair. And you can find out all the events that are posted on our website now.org of those events that they're currently doing. As for national, Vice President Bear Atwood and our government relations coordinator Jan Erickson are working together and have been working on a plan to kind of go in coalition and in alignment with what's happening in legislation to plan a national campaign for what we plan on doing to do action alerts and a national campaign alignment to support the ratification and removal of timelines. So to be more of a kind of action campaign in alignment with that. So that will be coming out. We'll be having more coordination with the 28th Amendment Committee as we go forward with that. And so you'll be hearing more information about that as they continue their planning from the national side. But for committee work and what's going on with the 20th Committee, you can check out the website, what they're doing. And as we go more for the National Action Campaign, you will hear about more details as we continue. We're kind of working alongside what's going on with the res updates and things like that. We're kind of following updates of the coalition and trying to be in alignment. So that's kind of where we're at.
Excellent. And we are. Thanks so much, Christian.
Yes.
And Joy, just a quick question for you. I'm so pleased that you lifted the racial piece of this, because there's often, the comment that the ERA really doesn't apply to women of color. Do you want to give us just a comment on that before we close out?
Well, there are 3 women of color who are three of women of color at least who are speaking on this call today. So I think that underscores that this is not just an issue for white women, but it is incumbent upon the coalition and now National Urban League, all of us, to be saying to women of color, we need you here. We need you in this space. They have to see themselves. So it's important that we are helping to lead, yes, but we also have to have it lead our tongue, right? When we're out there talking about other issues, we have to bring this issue into the debate and into the conversation. And it's important that when we're advocating and we're getting out there and we're building a crowd, that we have to be going to women of color groups and partnering with them. So, next time I want us to have the Black Women's Roundtable, and I want us to have the National Council of Negro Women, on this call and leading in the gender justice space, because they are trusted voices for Black women, or rather they're trusted within Black women's circles and sororities and fraternities. And I know Carol has been already doing this work.
Yeah. And in fact, both are partners in the coalition.
Right, exactly.
So we are thrilled. Well, I want to thank you all as our partner panelists for being on today, and all of the senators. I can't believe that we are near the close of our program. I do want to say, please go to our website, eracoalition.org. We have much work going on in terms of SJ Res 1. We are in the vulnerable states. We call them vulnerable, looking for possible Republican senators who can come on board. We're producing op-eds, a fabulous one with Gloria Steinem and Steve Anderson, coming from their perspectives. We are working with a strategy team. We've done messaging. Phil Donahue has given us a fantastic video to use in Ohio. And just to let you know that much is going on. A lot of it is behind the scenes and underneath, but a lot of meetings to make sure that we keep track of everything that is going on in the Senate, the Department of Justice, and with the attorneys general case in the courts. So that's it for us for our Senate update. Next month and the following month, we will have these kinds of midday updates on the Equal Rights Amendment. So we hope you will continue to join us on those. Thanks so much for everybody.
Thank you so much
for being here today. Thank you.
Bye.